This is the Sigma 500mm f/5.6. That's right, 500 millimeters f/5.6. Look how small it is.
Okay, it's small, but it's also about $3,000. And this Sony 200 to 600, this has been our go-to compact Sony wildlife lens for things like when we're on the kayak. And it has 600 millimeters. It goes back to 200, and it's only $2,000.
Okay, this is about $3,000, but if you want a prime lens, a 500mm prime, you really can't beat the size. And this is with the lens hood on as well, so it's going to be about this much smaller. It's lightweight, it's compact, but we're going to go over how it handles, if it's fast when you put it on your camera, how many frames per second you can really get, and of course, we have to look at the image quality to see if you can really get great pictures with a lens this tiny.
Whichever lens you decide on, I know where you should shop. You should shop at Adorama. They're sponsoring this video. They make videos like this possible. So whenever you're shopping, start at our link, sdp.io/Adorama. Ask any questions and make sure that you get your VIP points when you buy stuff, because you can cash that in for later benefits.
First, let me address the design of this lens because it's compact and it's lightweight, but it also feels high quality. They used some nice materials on this and added some nice details too, like this aperture ring. You can set it to click, which just has a nice feel. I think you all know how I feel about the clicky aperture rings. It's got these buttons here, so it has quite a few options for setting your modes, your focus. It also has a button here on the lens that you could program to do what you want. Even there's small details like to take off the lens hood, there's this nice metal screw that you can take off to take off your lens hood and make your tiny lens even smaller. If you want to take off this mount here, however, you're going to have to use an Allen wrench to take it off, but it does give you the option of being a little more compact if you're going to be sticking it in a suitcase, though I'd probably just leave it on so I don't have to deal with an Allen wrench. Another nice feature is that it has the quick release plate built in, so you don't have to attach a separate one or remember it. So that's a nice little feature to have.
The autofocus on this has worked really well. Sigma has come a long way with their autofocusing. Even tracking moving birds, I found it kept everything in focus and nice and sharp. But there are some artificial limitations that Sony puts on third-party lenses. Like if I'm shooting with the Sony A7CR or Sony A7 IV, no problem, no limitations. But if I'm shooting with one of their high-end action bodies like the A9 Mark III or the Sony A1, my go-to wildlife lens, my frames per second is going to be limited to 15. That's a pretty big drop from the A1's 30 frames per second or the A9 Mark III's 120 frames per second. I don't see any reason for that. I think it could keep up. I think it's just Sony's way of encouraging you to buy the Sony lenses. Another artificial limit is that I can't put a teleconverter on this. Well, physically I can attach a teleconverter and I can manually focus it. But when you add the teleconverter, the camera refuses to talk to the lens. And it's too bad because this is sharp enough that at least a 1.4 teleconverter would help. So if the high frames per second or the use of a teleconverter are a must-have for you, you might need to look at the Sony native lenses. There's no question, this Sigma lens is extremely sharp, even sharper than the Sony 200 to 600, which did so well. It definitely holds up to 60 megapixel resolution bodies like this, and it gives you a ton of croppability, at least at 500 millimeters compared to 500 on the Sony. Zooming in 800% on this boring test shot, we see significantly more detail from the Sigma at 500 millimeters than we do from the Sony zoom lens. And that makes sense since the Sigma is designed for this one specific focal length. The sharpness benefit is apparent throughout the frame. The Sony can zoom to 600 millimeters, which gives you more reach for faraway subjects, which is like almost all subjects when you're shooting wildlife. And the 500 millimeter, well, you could crop 20% to get to 600 millimeters. And by that time, the amount of light gathering ability and depth of field that you would get would be equivalent to f6.7, meaning it's actually a little bit slower than Sony's 200 to 600 f6.3, but the sharpness holds up. In fact, I felt like cropped to 600 millimeters, the 500 millimeter lens here was actually sharper. So you could think of it as a 500 to 600 zoom because you do have that extra croppability, at least with a high resolution body. But at the same time, the sharpness difference wasn't that much. And if you are shooting with the 200 to 600 and you wanted sharper results, I don't know that this is going to be enough for you to justify the difference. I think to get sharper results, you'd probably have to upgrade to the really big 600 f4 lens that we would typically use for like professional wildlife photography. Nonetheless, for the size and weight, the sharpness of this is absolutely incredible, and it's definitely up for professional use. So if you're a person who wants great results without a lot of weight, this is the lens for you.
Let's talk about shrinkage, focal shrinkage. That's when, as you get closer to your subject, your millimeters are not millimetering anymore. So when you get as close as possible that you can focus, your 500 might turn into 300. We compared both lenses and they both had some focal shrinking. The 500 millimeter could not focus as close as the 200 to 600, and the 200 to 600 also allowed you to fill the frame more. You can fix focal shrinking by putting on extension tubes. I didn't think it was a huge problem. There's no reason to be ashamed of it. Good news, this lens does have stabilization, but we're gonna have to throw it to voiceover so I can go somewhere warm and we can do the testing there. I just don't have any more layers to put on, honestly.
Look, wildlife photography in winter is tough, but even with my shivering hands, I managed to get about half of the shots stable at 5 stops below the reciprocal roll with the Sigma. That's 1/15 of a second. The Sony didn't fare nearly as well. It was about a half a stop or a full stop behind the Sigma in stabilization, so the Sigma can produce better shots in dim conditions like deep woods.
I know we haven't shown a lot of amazing pictures with this new 500 because it's like winter in Connecticut and most of the amazing wildlife have gone south, but we got a snowstorm today, and that's really one of the most gorgeous times around here. And so I made sure my feeder had plenty of food in it. And it's times like these when you really appreciate weather sealing on a lens, because you will get amazing pictures if you are willing to go out when other photographers are not, when it's too cold and too wet. And prime lenses like the Canon 600 and 800 f11, I wouldn't trust those in bad weather. They're cheap, but moisture will definitely get in them and fog them up, cause fungus or whatever. This lens seems incredibly well sealed, including around the lens mount. And so strapping my A1 onto it, I feel totally comfortable getting this gorgeous 4K footage out here. So for weather sealing, thumbs up for me.
So who should get this lens? Well, I recommend it to anybody who wants something that's compact and lightweight. I can see myself traveling with this. It'll fit in your suitcase easily. Or if you're just a person that walks around and doesn't want to lug around huge, heavy gear, this is a great option for you.
Yeah, I took that to Puerto Rico, and I took off this little lens mount and the lens hood, and I forgot it was in my bag. And I can't say that about any other Sony wildlife lens, but I think that is the primary benefit. Like, it's 50% more expensive than my 200 to 600 here. And it was sharper, but it wasn't so much like such a big real world difference that I think it would be worth paying for just for that. I really think if you're looking for small and lightweight, something you can carry, this is the best thing Sony has going on right now. But if the weight of the 200 to 600 isn't bothering you, this is probably a better general purpose wildlife lens.
Yeah, zoom can be a little more versatile. If you want to get this now, you can go to our sponsor, Adorama. We have links down below, and that tells them that you like our video, but also you just get good deals on gear. You can get your VIP points, and you can actually talk to a real human if you have questions there. So thanks, Adorama, and thanks to all of you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like, hit the notification bell, and comment down below if you have any recommendations for other reviews you'd like to see. Thanks.
Bye.